Now, I'm going to do my best to look at historical examples of comps that we had from this year's rookie class. But I will say a lot of these rookies like Keaton Mitchell, like Devon Achane, are doing things that we have simply never seen before, and it will be difficult to just look at data and try to predict what these guys will do in the future. But nonetheless, I want to look at everybody in this year's class and try to see what kind of career arcs we may be looking at. Starting off with my #1 running back in Dynasty. This isn't changing anytime soon. We are going to have Bijan Robinson. Now, with Bijan, he was drafted as the 2nd or 3rd overall running back in redraft leagues this year, depending on if you were going Eckler or Bijan, of course. So, I mean, if you were looking at those expectations, yeah, maybe he's been a little bit disappointing compared to what you were expecting coming into this season, where he's gone out there, he's averaged about 61 rushing yards per game, about 13 carries per game, about 15 points per game, and 24.5 receiving yards per game. If we're going to go through and look at all rookies to have done this since the year 2000, you have guys that turned out to have phenomenal careers, right? I mean, you have Breece Hall here, who's also a top 5 dynasty running back. You have Arian Foster, who obviously was elite at his very peak. But then you also have a couple other guys that you would be crying if Bijan Robinson turned into. I mean, you have someone here like Kerryon Johnson. You have Antonio Gibson. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire on this list. So, I mean, if you're going to be looking at Bijan, right now it's very difficult to sit here with the exact year one that we have had and call him an unquestioned elite level running back going in towards the future. So you really have to rely going back to what you thought about him in the pre-draft process, and if you thought he was that running back that checked every single box. Now, personally, I believe that that's the case. He was that top athlete. He had the size. He had the draft capital, the receiving down skill set. So I'm still going to be sold in on Bijan Robinson. If we're looking at the situation going into the future, Tyler Algier is still going to be there. So they're most likely going to continue to split this backfield in a certain capacity, right? I'm assuming that we're going to get maybe 70% Bijan, 30% Algier. What may end up changing, though, Cordell Patterson, if he is removed from the situation, that does open up an additional, say, 33 carries. That opens up an additional 137 rushing yards and about 29 receiving. I mean, if you throw that Cordell Patterson production onto Bijan Robinson next year, he is pretty much penciled in to be a top 5 running back. Now, I think most people are going to agree that in Dynasty, he is a top 5 RB, but it really comes down to where are you ranking him in your overall rankings. So if you're going to go over to flockfantasy.com right now, Bijan Robinson is ranked 18th in the community rankings. Those are completely free on flockfantasy.com. You can pull them up whenever you want. Personally, I have Bijan Robinson up at 11 in my rankings. However, thinking that he is one of the very few running backs that we can comfortably rely upon. Someone else that had a similar type rookie year, just in a little bit of a different way, will be Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs averaged about 63 rushing yards per game, 11.5 carries per game, 16 fantasy points, and about 26 receiving yards. If you're looking at the comps here, I mean, you have Arian Foster as well. You have Breece Hall, very much in a similar range to Bijan Robinson if you were just looking at the raw statistics behind these guys. Now, obviously, Gibbs is playing in a little bit of a different role. This is going to be a running back that's not handling as much work between the tackles. However, should be a little bit more efficient as a running back, especially with this work as a receiver. Now, the question is, how does this situation change going forward? I mean, next year, it's not going to. You look at the David Montgomery contract. Montgomery's going to be 27 next year. So, while maybe he's going to be dipping in efficiency just a bit, it's not like Montgomery's going to fall off the face of the planet. And they could only save about $700,000 from moving on from David Montgomery in 2024. So that's for sure not going to happen. Maybe they move on from him in 2025. They could save $5 million and Montgomery will be 28 in that season. But Montgomery's there for the foreseeable future, and you're most likely going to have Gibbs as that third down back plus. Now, personally, if you're looking at my rankings on flockfantasy.com, I have Jahmyr Gibbs ranked as my 2nd overall running back. And if you're looking at the community rankings, Gibbs is actually ahead of Bijan Robinson currently at 16 overall. I have Gibbs at 15 overall in my startup rankings, however, so I'm a little bit more pessimistic. And I do want to reiterate that we are making this video with about 4 weeks left to go in the season. So right now, we can try to sit here and we can try to extrapolate how this is going to look going into next year. But these next 4 weeks are going to be critical, where if Gibbs or Bijan or maybe our next guy, Devon Achane, they go out there and they turn into the true league winners you want them to be in the second half, then maybe these comps get a lot better. Now, going over to Devon Achane, I simply can't really use the typical thresholds that we want to look at. I want to go through and I want to look at his volume. I want to combine that with his efficiency, his points per game. But the issue is we have never seen a running back be as productive as Devon Achane with such a limited workload. So if we look at running backs that were similar with their rushing yards per game, running backs that were similar with their receiving yards per game, and their points per game, you have a list of phenomenal options. You have LT on this list. You have Leonard Fournette. You have Dalvin Cook. You have Clinton Portis. You have Adrian Peterson. You have Chris Johnson. You have Jonathan Taylor. Devon Achane looks like an absolute stud when it just comes to his overall points that he is scoring at the end of every single week. But there is a big time difference in what you have with Devon Achane in someone like LT, someone like Leonard Fournette. LT is going out there and he's averaging 21 carries per game as a rookie. That gives you a great sense of, okay, he can go out there and he can replicate this. He can do this in year 2. He's going to have a phenomenal career. Same thing, Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson, 17 carries per game. However, if we're going to be looking at Devon Achane here, this is a running back that simply did not have that. Devon Achane, 9.3 carries per game so far this season. That is almost half of all the other running backs on this list that were this productive. Now, of course, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just want to point out exactly how much of an outlier he is. And that if we're going to go through and look at all running backs since the year 2000, this is from the RotoViz screener, to have more than 50 carries in a season, the yards per carry leaders, you had Devon Achane, Jarius Norwood, who's down at 6.4. Devon Achane's at 9.5. Then you had Alvin Kamara, J.K. Dobbins, the only guys that average more than 6 yards per carry with this kind of volume, and Achane's at 9.5. So I realistically don't know what we can be expecting going forward, because the issue with Achane coming into the season was he was an undersized running back that you didn't know if you'd be able to stay healthy with the full workload. We all knew he was an elite level athlete, going to be very efficient. But he weighed 188 pounds with a BMI of 27.8. We haven't seen him have that full workload. We haven't seen him stay healthy. Now, am I coming out here and saying that Devon Achane's going to be a bum? Of course I'm not saying that. Like Devon Achane currently in my rankings, I have him as our RB7 in Dynasty. If you're looking at the community rankings, Devon Achane is the RB6. So it's just a black box where we've really never seen anybody with this kind of profile. And Keaton Mitchell is almost similar. I would love to go out there and say, okay, this is what Keaton Mitchell did year 1. Let's go through and let's project him out. The reality of the situation is Keaton Mitchell's had 38 carries. If you're looking at running backs with this many carries in their NFL career, Keaton Mitchell right now is the second RB on that list as a rookie in yards per carry, only behind Mr. Achane. So at the end of the day, we really can't draw comps for Mitchell. This is an undrafted free agent running back that's also undersized, 179 pounds. That's also in an elite level offense. We can say if you're looking towards the future, Gus Edwards is not under contract in 2024. They could move on from Justice Hill and save $2.5 million. J.K. Dobbins is not under contract either. So maybe you make the argument, oh, okay, well, Keaton Mitchell is going to step into that starting role next year, and he's going to be the guy, and he will have the opportunity. But, a lot of people just want to say that, but there's a big difference in believing it and it actually being the case. So a lot of times with these undrafted guys, they may flash a little bit, but the team does not have them in their long-term plans. And we've seen that over and over and over again. Now, going over to Zach Charbonnet. Charbonnet actually had the draft capital, right? Playing alongside Kenneth Walker really has not had the opportunity. If you're looking at his comps, you have a whole lot of nothing. You have guys like Mike Davis, Joshua Kelly, Matt Breida, these other committee type running backs. I don't want to sit here and say, okay, yeah, Zach Charbonnet comps to be a committee running back because he was in a committee year 1. But the issue is with Charbonnet, I can't exactly not say that. And that if you're going to go through and look at the situation going towards the future, you still have Kenneth Walker on the rookie deal. So it's not like Kenneth Walker is going to be going anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. So it's kind of difficult to go out there and rank Charbonnet. I would almost view Charbonnet how A.J. Dillon was viewed back in the day, where you can sit here and you can say, okay, well, this is someone we can start if you're very desperate and you really need to. But the main reason you're holding on to him is if the starter were to go down in front of him, then at that point, he could be someone that you are extremely excited about. If you're going over to the flockfantasy.com community rankings, he's currently at 89 in these overall rankings. I have him at 78 in mine. And a big difference is if you look at, say, a 2025 early to mid second or a 2024 early second in these Dynasty Superflex leagues, the community rankings, aka y'all in your Dynasty leagues, are ranking those picks, those second rounders, ahead of Charbonnet, where I personally am ranking Zach Charbonnet ahead of 2024 seconds and 2025 seconds. So I would be a buyer of Zach Charbonnet if I could go out there and if I could sell that 2024 second round pick, even if it's the 202, and go get Charbonnet right now. Now let's move over to our next backfield in Tyjae Spears. Now, a lot of people are going to be looking at Spears because he's flashed. He's looked good when he's on the football field. And Derrick Henry's not under contract in 2024. So, I mean, 1 + 1 = 2, right? Okay, I guess Spears is going to be a starting running back. It doesn't exactly work that way. If you're going to look at the comps here, the main hope that you would have for a player like Tyjae Spears is that he turns into James Cook in a worse offense, right? I mean, that's what you are kind of looking here for the comps. You have a lot of other backs that are primarily just receiving backs that never turn into 3-down bell cows. And of course, I'm not just cherry picking this data. This is just the range of outcomes from what we've saw year one. Because I know we always want to sit here and we want to go, oh, Keaton Mitchell looked good. Tyjae Spears looks good. As soon as they're the starter, they're going to have success. The teams will give them the starting role. I like doing this historical research. That way I just give you a very realistic expectation of what you can expect from these guys and show you that it's not always a guarantee that they're going to go out there and they're going to take that starting job the next year. In the case of someone like James Cook, yeah, it will happen. In the case of someone like Justin Jackson, it will never. If you're looking at where he's valued right now in the flockfantasy.com community rankings, he's currently at 110. What's funny enough is I actually have him at 110 in my own rankings as well. However, looks like the community rankings are much higher in second round picks than I am. I would rather have the mid-range 2024 second over Tyjae Spears. But if I could go through and sell Spears, say for that 204, I'm going to do it. I would buy Spears if it cost me like the 211, 212. And then obviously in a one quarterback format, those picks will be worth a little bit less. Now, an example of a running back that I would want to come out here and say, hook 'em horns, he's going to thrive next year is Roschon Johnson. But looking at this data here, if you're looking at the realistic comps for Roschon, I mean, pretty much the best case scenario, I guess you can say CJ Spiller, but I think a realistic scenario here is actually Jaylen Warren, where Jaylen Warren and Roschon Johnson both had very similar rookie seasons. And going into next year, you have Deonta Foreman no longer under contract for the Chicago Bears. Khalil Herbert has the last year of his contract in 2024. So I think you could almost see Roschon go into a similar situation to what Jaylen Warren was in this year, where you're in that 50-50 split backfield. I'd imagine Khalil Herbert's the first and second down back, where Roschon is the third down back based off what he can do as a receiver. And then hopefully, I don't want to say hopefully we have an injury, but if you were to have an injury to Khalil Herbert, then at that point you would have a high-end ceiling when it comes to what we are getting for Roschon Johnson. Now let's move this over to Chase Brown. Obviously, Chase Brown's looked pretty damn good as of late. Now, the reality of the situation is if we're looking at all these comps, the majority of the time Chase Brown turns into nothing. Okay, this is the best way I can illustrate this data. While yes, Joe Mixon is technically cuttable if you are looking at 2024. I mean, he has about $2.7 million on the dead cap. They owe him $8.5. They could save about $6 million if they wanted to move on from Joe Mixon. And yes, that would mean Chase Brown's the next guy up. But the thing is, they could always go out there and they could draft someone in the second round this year. They could draft someone in the third round this year. Chase Brown's completely irrelevant. Now, that's not to say he has absolutely no shot. If you're looking at his comps, you have someone like Devonta Freeman here. But I mean, you have a lot of no names. You're looking at a 10 to 20% expected hit rate with players in these ranges. And if you could just go through and stack as many of these guys up on your taxi squad, then yeah, maybe you are excited about it. But by no means can you be sitting there with your dynasty team and just looking at someone like Chase Brown and going, okay, I feel comfortable with what we are going to have this next. No, it doesn't work like that. Miller will be our next guy. If you are looking at him, we really did not see much at all as a rookie, but I do want to talk about him just because obviously this is someone that people liked in rookie drafts. And if you're looking at the situation and how this is going to change going into 2024, while the Saints aren't going to have a lot of firepower to go out there and sign a running back to bring someone else in, I mean, we can say, okay, well, doesn't really matter if they bring someone else in. You already got two guys there. If you look at the situations for Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams, they can't really move on from these guys. I mean, maybe you move on from Jamal if you want to save about $1.5 million. Alvin Kamara literally has, I believe, $1.5 million you can save from moving on from him. He has $16 million on the dead cap. So Kamara is going to be in here for 2024. Maybe you have, I mean, you probably have no Alvin Kamara for 2025, unless he restructures his deal. Looking at his deal right now, there's no way in hell he's on the roster. Then Jamal Williams, most likely not on the roster in 2025 either. But for the foreseeable future, probably looks like this is going to be that crowded backfield, and you had nothing from the guys as a rookie. So I don't know if you can comfortably rely on him going forward. But I think that should be it for this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you've not done so, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And of course, if you ever want to check out those free Dynasty rankings, you can find those on flockfantasy.com. My rankings are behind a paywall, but we always have the community rankings out there free for y'all to use. Trying to provide y'all as much value as we possibly can over there. But yeah, if you also wanted to get anything behind our paywall, a trade calculator, all my premium content, all the rankings for all your favorite Dynasty creators, you can sign up to flockfantasy.com, promo code FLOCK. You'll get 30% off any subscription. Plus, yours truly will break down your Dynasty team with a podcast, trying to help you out on what you should do. But you can find that link in the description or the comment section. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you out with that video later tonight.